This is Winston Churchill walking through the bombed-out streets of London.
Oh, and if you thought that was cool, here's him escaping prison in a shootout with Latvian anarchists and serving in the trenches of World War I. No one could say the cigar-smoking, whiskey-swilling prime minister had an easy ride to the top, suffering humiliation after humiliation along the way. He lost at the battlefield, he lost at parliament, he lost elections, allies, entire nations, and at times, his mind. But he never gave in. So how did one of Britain's most disgraced politicians become the man who saved it? Look no further as we unpack how he dealt with a particular art school reject, watched the empire fade despite victory, and shaped a new world of nations and powers. By the end, you'll see why Churchill is one of history's most controversial and consequential figures. He was born at his family's estate, Blenheim Palace. His father, Lord Randolph, was a brilliant but troubled politician. His mother, Jenny Jerome, an American socialite who dazzled London society. Little old Winston? Overlooked and disregarded. He stumbled through school and scraped into Sandhurst Military Academy on his third try. In uniform, he found purpose. From Cuba to India, he chased bullets and headlines. Even as a young soldier, Churchill fancied a career in politics. In 1899, the Boer War in South Africa turned out to be his ticket to glory. Churchill joined as a correspondent and promptly ended up on an armored train ambushed by the Boers, who took him prisoner. Most captives waited out the war, not Churchill. One night, he climbed a wall, slipped into the dark, and vanished. His 300-mile journey to freedom made him a national hero. Winston rode that fame straight into politics. At just 26, he became the youngest member of parliament. He set about trying to develop that invaluable political quality, a desire for mischief. And mischief he did. Churchill and a band of co-conspirators made sure to heckle opponents, break decorum, even taunt party elders. Together, they called themselves the Hooligans. But Winston knew that sooner or later, he would have to get his hands dirty. Enter Joseph Chamberlain, former mayor of Birmingham, current colonial secretary. His dream, bind the British Empire into one giant economic fortress, imperial preference.
Gentlemen, behold, the master plan. Step 1, impose tariffs on the foreign riffraff, but our colonies, they get preferential treatment. Low tariffs. Family, after all, gets a discount. Step 2, take the loot, revenue, and funnel it into shiny reforms and national projects. Roads, schools, non-toxic water for all. And step 3, the pièce de résistance. We fuse the whole empire into an imperial superstate. One parliament, one military, one customs system, stretching from the frosted frontiers of Canada to the spice markets of Bombay. An empire bound by steam and steel, with telegraph lines whispering my will, our will, across the continents.
It sounded bold, noble, and completely insane to Winston. He believed imperial preference would create a cost of living crisis. Winston tried making his case in Birmingham, Joe's home turf, and their feud soon split the party. Imperial preference threw the government into chaos. Churchill switched sides, joining the Liberals. Chamberlain and the Conservatives were voted out. Joe continued his fight, but suffered a stroke soon after. He would never return to public life. Meanwhile, Churchill thrived as a Liberal. Within a few years, he was appointed Home Secretary. Prison conditions improved as he threw himself into the role. Critics raised concern over the corporal punishment of criminals. Churchill and his secretary, always considerate of public opinion, responded by flogging themselves to test out the claims. A few years earlier, his stance on women's suffrage led to a protester whipping him with a dog whip.
Hey!
Ladies, I'm trying to do my work today. Leave me alone type shit.
Yeah, he wasn't always a good boy. Striking miners in the Welsh valley of Tonypandy presented his first real test. As riots broke out, Churchill authorized the police to act while holding troops in reserve. But shots were fired. And he was pegged as the toff who sent the army against starving miners.
2 months later, Winston was back in the headlines.
Police had cornered a group of Latvian anarchists to a rundown house on Sydney Street. A gunfight ensued. Churchill rushed over to help out?
Sir, it's a live gunfight. Excellent. I'll supervise. Steady, lads. This is the most fun I've had since the floggings.
As the building caught fire, he stopped the fire brigade from intervening.
Let it burn.
The anarchists burned, and Winston congratulated himself on a job well done. The papers had a rather different impression. Colleagues worried about his recklessness until Germany started flexing its military might. Britain needed someone bold and defiant to command their navy. So in October 1911, Churchill was appointed First Lord of the Admiralty. At his urging, the fleet transitioned to oil and Britain acquired a majority share of the Anglo-Persian Oil Company, now BP. He also championed the expansion of naval aviation. Yup, that's Winston flying the incredibly dangerous new planes of the era. For research purposes only, of course. The fun ended in the summer of 1914 with the outbreak of the Great War. Churchill sprang into action. Admiral Jackie Fisher was recalled to the Navy. Old, brilliant, and completely unstable.
You're still hell freezers. Build more submarines, not more lobsters.
Despite all this, Churchill kept the old admiral around for his occasional strokes of brilliance. As the war heated up, Winston couldn't resist the action. With Antwerp on the verge of surrendering to Germany, he rushed out to aid the cause. The old soldier in him came roaring back. Under fire aboard battleships, shouting orders through the smoke, pacing the front lines with exhausted Belgian troops who could barely stay upright. Churchill held the city for a full week. He even tried resigning as First Lord to officially be made commander. Instead, he was ordered home and Antwerp fell soon after. Undeterred, Churchill hatched another audacious plan, Gallipoli. He proposed using the navy to force a route through the Dardanelles Strait, knocking the Ottoman Empire out of the war and opening supply lines to Russia. His grand plan turned into a bloodbath. 250,000 Allied casualties. The backlash was relentless. In May 1915, the First Lord resigned. Determined to do his part, Churchill went to serve on the Western Front. He spent 6 months fighting in the trenches, even commanding his own battalion, until finally he sailed back home, ready to climb the political ladder once again. Over the next few years, Winston worked his way up to colonial secretary. At the Cairo Conference of 1921, he redrew the modern Middle East.
Sir, what shape should Transjordan be?
Square's too harsh, circle too whimsical. How about we just slap some lines together and call it destiny?
And the borders? Just make sure the lines cut through enough tribal lands to keep everyone engaged.
Right. British-backed rulers were installed in Iraq and Transjordan. In Palestine, Churchill reaffirmed Britain's support for a Jewish homeland, while promising to protect Arab rights at the same time. But beneath the neat borders and polished treaties lay tensions waiting to ignite. Churchill moved on after less than 2 years, leaving behind a fragile new order. The Liberal government collapsed in 1922 and Winston rejoined the Conservatives. 2 years later, he was appointed Chancellor of the Exchequer. Talk about failing upwards. He brought Britain back to the gold standard, tying the pound to gold at its pre-war rate. It was meant to restore confidence and make London a financial hub. Instead, it strangled the economy. Exports collapsed, wages fell, unemployment soared. By 1929, Labour won the election and Churchill was out again. With his political relevance vanishing, Winston needed a purpose. At the time, most people agreed India should start moving towards self-government. Horrifying Churchill. He saw the British Empire as sacred and refused to let it unravel on his watch. A one-man crusade began. Rallies, speeches, endless newspaper columns. His old comments calling Gandhi a half-naked fakir resurfaced. Not his finest hour. Having alienated the party, he resigned his seat on the front bench. So began his wilderness years. He fell back on writing and lecturing to stay afloat. Unfortunately, he also fell back onto an incoming taxi while crossing the road. After recovering, Churchill found a new obsession. He became one of the first to warn of Hitler's threat. The British public, along with Parliament, paid no attention. They thought Winston was simply fear-mongering to stay relevant, but he hadn't hit rock bottom yet. In 1936, King Edward VIII wanted to marry Wallis Simpson, a twice-divorced American, and keep the crown. The government deemed it unconstitutional. Churchill disagreed. He worked with his friend Lord Beaverbrook to stop the abdication. But Edward gave up. As Beaverbrook quipped, "Our cock won't fight, so it's no dice." In Parliament, Churchill's plea for delay was heckled into silence.
Drop it! Twister! Sit down!
He admitted to a fellow minister, "My political career is finished." Edward abdicated, George VI became king, and Churchill was humiliated. By 1939, he was a political ghost. He'd spent years warning of the war while everyone longed for peace. But now, peace was dead in the water. Germany invaded Poland, Britain declared war, and the Royal Navy's fleets all received the same message. Winston is back. He was plucked out of the wilderness and reinstated as First Lord of the Admiralty.
We are so back!
Churchill's daring stood out in a government stumbling through the first months of the war. The Prime Minister soon lost his job. A coalition was formed. Labour insisted there were only two worthy replacements, Lord Halifax or our boy Winston. Halifax withdrew, and Churchill prepared for a walk with destiny. He created a small war cabinet, streamlining communication. If he didn't like your work, you'd know.
I want them all to feel my power.
His quest for efficiency even led him to popularizing the siren suit. Zip-up wartime onesies he wore to meetings, shelters, even the White House.
Jock, can you zip yours in under 5 seconds?
Sir? Watch a master at work.
Curious. There seems to be... Jock, help! Sir, if you just stop moving, I am the Prime Minister. I do not stop moving.
5 seconds, you said, sir?
Zip it, Jock. I'm trying, sir. That's how we got here.
Gentlemen,
We're testing defensive positions, very advanced. You wouldn't understand.
But first came the Battle of Britain. Hitler's plan? Crush the RAF, then invade the mainland. The RAF were outnumbered but unafraid. Under Churchill's watch, Britain created the world's first integrated air defense system. Behind the scenes, they had another advantage. The Germans used the Enigma machine to send coded orders, thinking it was unbreakable.
Challenge accepted.
British codebreakers cracked the cipher. Supply lines opened up as the transcripts finally revealed the location of deadly German U-boats. The Battle of Britain started to break Churchill's way too. Superior British intelligence and technology, combined with the incredible skill and bravery displayed by young RAF pilots, proved too much for Germany. Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few. The Nazis changed their approach. Time for some good old blitzkrieg. For 8 months, German bombers launched nightly raids. 43,000 civilians died. Every night, citizens cowered in underground bomb shelters. But every morning, the Prime Minister could be seen walking among ruins, speaking directly to survivors. By May 1941, the Nazis accepted that Churchill wouldn't let Britain crack. The Blitz was over. Meanwhile, Churchill approved a relentless bombing campaign against Germany. The goal: destroy industry, cripple supply lines, break morale. It was brutally effective. Whole cities burned in retaliation. In Dresden, 40,000 civilians died in one night. Even the RAF questioned their instructions, only to find Churchill had signed the order himself. In 1944, the Allies decided to liberate France and open up the Western Front. D-Day, the largest amphibious invasion in history. Haunted by the ghosts of Gallipoli, Churchill refused to give the go-ahead until he was sure of victory. D-Day was an incredible success. He came away with much credit. But Churchill's record wasn't spotless. In 1943, famine swept through Bengal, over 3 million dead. His government failed to divert resources, blaming local mismanagement instead. Churchill's harsh comments, "Indians breed like rabbits," haunted his reputation long after. Still, Winston was shocked to lose in the 1945 general election. Even he couldn't defeat the promise of a welfare state. As leader of the opposition, Winston watched his beloved empire break apart. No longer at the helm, he turned to writing, publishing his memoir of the Second World War. It became the definitive historical account of the period. Not that this was a surprise to Churchill. He once remarked of his predecessor, Neville Chamberlain, "Poor Neville will come badly out of history. I know. I will write that history." Gotta love a good multi-generation family feud. His books later earned him a Nobel Prize, plus $2 million in royalties, about 30 today. Not bad for a guy who flirted with bankruptcy most of his life. Politically, he stayed sharp, waiting as always for destiny to call again. In 1951, the Conservatives were voted back in. Winston Churchill, at 76 years old, became Prime Minister once more. The Cold War had kicked off, and Churchill didn't want to be left behind. He tied Britain to NATO and the nuclear future. But in 1953, he suffered a serious stroke. The fire was fading, and Winston stepped down 2 years later. Winston Churchill died on January 24, 1965, 90 years after his birth and 70 years to the day of his father's death, having become the leader his troubled father once hoped to be. History resists simple tales. Its stories are often tangled, victories beside failures, genius beside ruin. Churchill was the man who refused to surrender when all hope seemed lost, the hero who saved democracy. But he also bombed Dresden, starved Bengal, drew borders across the Middle East that fractured the region for generations. His life is proof that greatness and failure are often bound by the same thread: conviction. The same fire that saved Britain could burn others far from its shores. But beneath it all was a mind obsessed with preparation. Weighing problems, reading endlessly, demanding facts before decisions. He believed retreat was death and hesitation worse. What endures isn't perfection, but his persistence, his refusal to let fear decide what history would remember. And if there's a lesson in that, it's this: destiny favors those who prepare relentlessly, then act decisively. Oh, and remember, stay curious.